Hello, everyone. So, good afternoon. It is really great pleasure to have you with us this afternoon. And we are going to talk about a very important question that almost every founder, every investor, every technologist is thinking about. How can we really win in this AI era? And today we are so fortunately to have two panelists with us to have 20 minutes for this question, for this we are seeking for some information for you to reference. And I'm honored to introduce two of you. The first is Brad. So Brad is the managing director of the Initialized fund. So he will share us from the investor perspective. And Pratap, you are the co-founder of the Arena, and you are doing things wanted to push the anything outside the LLM to become more physically. So first, I would like to ask Brett, and because for the last of the 2 years, the AI field has changed a lot. So when you look at your portfolios, what's the most biggest change you have real for of them? Could you share us about this kind of transformation?
Yeah, it has been a crazy couple of years, and I think what I've noticed the most is just the impact on how things get built. Like software, it's changed extremely about how people build software and like make up software teams, because if nothing else, LLMs are very good at writing software, and so across the portfolio and in the companies we look at, suddenly a bunch of things that were very hard perhaps 10 years ago to build and deploy have become a lot easier, and that's how effects that ripple through the entire ecosystem. And I think that you can probably hear from Pratap on Arena, like how they're part of that trend.
Okay, Prata. So also for the founder, for the last of the 2 years, maybe you have go through the turbulence. So how can you share with us your kind of experience for last of the 2 years, and how do you think your company will prepare for the next turbulence?
Yeah, I think it's it's kind of ironic because AI, which started out as fundamentally a prediction machine, has created an environment that's inherently unpredictable. For us, I'll just share an anecdote from we did a company retreat recently, and we kicked off the year with the same word, and we sort of anchored the retreat with the same word, and that word was courage. I think the time to assume that you know what to build and has a long-term defensible strategy is kind of over in some way. And maybe the better mantra is a little bit from Bruce Lee, who said, "Be like water." And I think what we found is, with us specifically, that meant, we started before LLMs. We were building large models paired with reinforcement learning for a variety of enterprise applications. And we made a pretty bold choice about 11 months ago to pivot.
Mm-hmm.
And just to give you a sense of the degree of the pivot, we sunset over 90% of our revenue. And so that was a moment of like getting the team to rally. And the whole idea was, again, if you channel sort of something from like JFK's Go to the Moon speech, it was, we choose to go to the moon because it is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Hard is defensible.
Mm-hmm.
And so we double down. I think it's really working fantastically. I think we're up, we've grown tremendously, but I do think that sort of, I think every founder right now needs to assess, needs to think about defensibility much earlier than you had to do before.
Mm-hmm. So how do you view about Prata, his suggestion for the company to sometimes to rewrite, to reinvent? Will you consider to invest in this kind of company because always it always change? So will you feel any kind of risk?
Yeah, I mean, it's always risky, but I mean, I think first and foremost at the firm, we invest in entrepreneurs, and I think if we didn't trust them to run their companies and make these kinds of hard decisions, we've already lost. Because I'm a big believer as a former entrepreneur myself, and as someone who comes from an ecosystem that believes that they are the ones that drive the value in our industry. That if you're not trusting people to navigate, the person closest to the actual metal and like what's going on and talking to the customer knows better than me. So I think it's often the hardest thing to figure out when and how to pivot, because Getting to product market fit is this non-deterministic thing where you might be a tiny tweak away or you might be way off. And so only the people like in the seat are going to have the intuitions around where to go. And so, I mean, I think that, with Arena, yeah, it seemed a little risky at the time, but we had confidence in Pratap to make such a call. And I think he's like quite vindicated in the decision so far. So we're quite excited about that.
Yes, it's true. And Pratap, so you mentioned that the language is maybe the first step for the intelligence. So let's look at the future. What kind of things do you think that would be the next stage beyond LLM? Can you give us some kind of forecast?
Yeah, so I think there's two ways to look at LLMs, right? I think one way, which I would characterize as the mainstream viewpoint, is language is the primitive of intelligence. And if you think about the January 2020 paper from OpenAI, Scaling Laws for Neural Language Models, that sort of reset the whole industry, it showed that when you scale the models up, again, with words as the tokens, you started to see these wonderful emergent properties. Now, the primary school of thought is great. That is the AI. And if you forecast that out, it gets bigger and eventually just becomes, super intelligence. We subscribe to a different view, and that is language is the first primitive of intelligence. For example, animals do not learn to move by reading about it. So movement is probably a second primitive. For us, we work in applied physics, and physics even predates biological organic life, right? And so if you think about the four fundamental forces of physics, you have strong force, weak force, gravity, and electromagnetism. We're focused on electromagnetism. We believe EM fields are a primitive itself. I think you're going to see an explosion of foundation models. I think teams that can prove out that scaling laws exist in those domains, I think those are going to be, I think we're seeing just the beginning of, this is probably like 1% of what we're going to see. I think language is just the first innings.
Yes. And Brad, so because there are a lot, you have viewed a lot of CEOs, and from your understanding, what most important elements do you think can make this company really success in AI from your investor perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think AI is I actually don't think there's a big difference in terms of it being an AI CEO versus being another CEO. I think that there's obviously a domain expertise that is required, and in some fields there's a additional attribute of founder market fit. But I think fundamentally the biggest companies are built by people who are just extremely high agency, very high velocity, perhaps a little bit impatient about what they want to see in the world and what it feels like to get it out there, and then just have like a very big vision. Like they're not, enormous companies get built by refusing to be good companies along the way many, many times. And so if you're not a little bit irrational about what you want to achieve, either by being obsessed with your domain or just being that ambitious as an individual, you're not gonna navigate to a very large outcome. And I think that the best founders will go, like, if they need domain expertise, like, the best founders can go create founder market fit because they're obsessive about what they're curious about, and they can embed it in a domain and figure everything out. And so, I guess kind of flip the answer, but I think of AI CEOs as the same, I guess, generally. And I don't think that it'll be a distinction for long. I think, AI was just technology in the same way that like web services and websites are technology startups. And so I think it all dovetail.
Pratap, do you agree with Brad about the CEO, the success of the company?
Yeah, I think Brett's exactly right. I think the founder market fit. Yeah, we like to think we have that. I spent 8 years as an applied physicist doing quantum electromagnetism, and now I'm back doing it with AI. And I also agree. I think on what you said about the trading off sometimes good company versus enormity. We went through a phase after the pivot where you could say, wow, here's a company that deleted 90% of its revenue. There was a time where we were officially, for, I would say, 4 months, not a good company. But I do believe, I think the thing that excites me most, like most of our product right now, is augmenting hardware engineers. Hardware engineers are working 200% faster because of our product. But that's not why we're doing this. We're doing this because you think about a lot of fields of applied science, like electromagnetism, humans are not biologically evolved for that. our intuition, I mean, it's not remarkable to believe that AI will surpass the human. What's remarkable to believe is human beings created things like GPUs in the first place. That's the anomaly, right? And so I believe with advanced AI models pushing applied science, we're basically going to pull future technologies in by a few centuries. And I think that's why we have the company. That's why everyone at our company wakes up every morning, wakes up on Saturday, works up on Sunday, and pushes code.
Mm-hmm. And yes, so in order to be success, we are not only need to try our really hard from ourselves, but also need to view the competitors. So since I'm from China, so I would like to know what's your reaction about China's AI industry. For example, from Pratap, how do you think about the AI companies, the founders from China? Do you think they are competitive, or do you think if you have any kind of advantage can win this AI race?
So, I spent a few years as a track and triathlon athlete, and I think the greatest honor in a race is when you compete with fierce competitors. Like, you have a respect for your competition. Your competition makes you better. I think we're seeing fantastic technology, fantastic entrepreneurs. I think many Chinese companies and AI companies, especially in robotics, are really showing how fast you can move and what can be done. Super inspiring to see. I think as a fierce competitor, myself, I think we're in it to win it. Competition makes us better.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think the outcome of that is, what we can't lose in the US and in the West in general is, I think just to be frank, I think Google, for example, became a retirement home for 20-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
You had a bunch of software engineers go there in their 20s and get sushi lunch and work 10 to 4 and think they were doing work. I think no, it's like we're back in the space race, actually quite literally. And so I think it's kind of a call to arms for everyone to sort of push themselves. I think it will be beneficial for every single person and consumer because technology will become better, more democratized, widely available, and become cheaper. But I do think it's on us to be more ambitious, like Brett was saying, and especially in domains that have to do with hardware and applied science. I think we took our eyes off that for a while, and I think it's time to bring them back in the West.
Mm-hmm. Brad.
Yeah, I mean, I think I resoundingly agree. I mean, I think there's obviously some very impressive work coming out of Chinese startups, and I think there's something to learn there, and that the United States just needs to lean into things that are hard to do. And the work ethic is like kind of a moat in its own way if you think about it in terms of like it's hard to repeat things that are hard to do. All right. And a lot of what's happening in AI right now is like it's getting a lot easier to do a lot of types of startups, and that's why you're seeing a flood of kind of applied AI like workflow companies, and that they are very interesting things to build. And as a former developer, I kind of feel like I'm missing the moment of being able to vibe code more because it seems like a lot of fun. But when you think about generational companies, there are things where people just dig in and through force of will, refuse for it to be anything other than a large outcome. And that's where marketing and hype are skills. They're important. They're part of your journey. They can really help your company along. But doing the hard stuff is what makes what actually gets the value at the other end.
Mm-hmm. So I have a little bit more questions. So because people would say the US China this tech competition. So maybe in next 5-10 years, which side do you think can have the tech advantage? So maybe Pratap?
I think I've always been a firm believer in the fact that if you have an environment where a diverse group of people with diverse backgrounds can come together and build something that is truly kind of like original, that is truly unique, in an environment where they're doing it from a place of like, I want to do this. I firmly subscribe to the fact that culture creates some of the most profound innovations. And so I definitely am a big believer in that. I do think one thing we in the West need to learn from China is, Brett said it about work ethic, but just the scale, right? Production scale, especially the hardware side. I think for us to win, we have to start building like a hardware capability and like a deep science and bring back our deep science capability. But I do believe like fundamentally I'm a subscriber to culturally like diverse, inclusive, free environment does create better outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Brad, you mentioned that people are the most important elements. So how can you find out the right people? Can you tell us some of your kind of experience, your suggestions? How can you find the good founder, and how can founder can find the right talent? How can we encourage them to success?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for us, it is a little bit of a, we mostly value people oftentimes before they have a meaningful business, before product market fit. And I think I actually think of when you're evaluating early stage startups, almost everything you look at is a proxy for the founder. What market they're in is important, but good founders choose large markets because they want to build a large business. And, being able to build a product is quite important. And, product quality is again like a proxy for the founder. And I think that so we look for, I think it actually is kind of difficult in this low information environment before there's a lot of data on a company. And I think it is a pattern match that takes perhaps years to develop. I very much believe that seed stage investing is a reps game where you will learn to react to entrepreneurs and learn to pick up signals about their level of like the velocity at which they move and their their level of ambition. And then I think that it also is just, I mean, the right kind of people are a little bit magnetic, right? They're very impressive and other people want to be around them, and then other talented people want to work with them. And so there's a compounding effect to having, like world-class entrepreneurs running a company, because it is a fight for talent, and they need to be able to be the kind of people that other talented people see themselves working alongside as peers. And they need, oftentimes, the second thing that they don't always start with, but they pick up very quickly, is you need to be the good communicator, because communicating vision and where you want the company to go is what inspires people to want to go on the journey with you.
So, Pratap, since our time is limited, so I will give you 20 seconds. Can you share us a secret? That's one secret. That's how you can encourage the talents follow you to accomplish the mission with you.
I think there's no secret. I think the mission is so much greater than any of us, right? I think for us, we're talking about ushering in technologies that humanity doesn't have. There's a thing called a Kardashev scale where you measure civilizational progress by how much energy the civilization can consume. Kardashev level 1 can consume a planet scale energy, level 2, the star, and level 3, basically the galaxy. We're at like 0.7. Our mission is just so much greater than any individual. We're not here just trying to like make a company. We're trying to push humanity further down the Kardashev scale. That's what works for us.
Yes, that's great. Really appreciate it. Since our time is up right now, we have to end our discussion here. But I think afterward we can continue to have discussion from investor perspective and from founders perspective, and maybe we can encourage more and more China, East and West collaboration, because the technology is so profound. Not only company or not only fund can obtain all the things. So really appreciate for your time with us. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.